Hello and welcome to Expert Matters. Today we are thrilled to host an accomplished leader in the field of human resources and people management, Mr. Debansh Roy. With a stellar career spanning over a decade and a half, he has held critical leadership roles at renowned organizations, and he is currently serving as the Vice President and Head of People at Alliance Bernstein India. Mr. Roy is also a board member contributing to strategic business transitions, mergers, and people management frameworks at a global scale. His expertise in HR transformation, talent development, and organizational strategy makes him a true inspiration for aspiring MBA graduates and young professionals. Let's dive into his journey and learn from his exceptional experience and insights. Thank you so much, Debansh, for taking our time and coming us to share your insights and your knowledge.
Thank you so much, Shruti. That was a very, I would say, a very generous introduction. I wish my parents had the same view of me as you do. So thank you for a good start on that front.
Thank you so much again. I will just dive into it and start with my first question because I was very curious to know that from starting in HR roles at luxury hotels to becoming the vice president and head of people at Alliance Bernstein, how did you navigate your career trajectory?
That's a really good one, actually. I don't think I chose my first role. I joined the Leela Group at a time when we were going through the 2008 subprime mortgage crisis. So campus recruitments weren't in the best place. But as luck would have had it, I think one of the stints that I'm the most proud of is my stint with the Leela Kempinski Group. I joined them at a time when they were growing exponentially. And that taught me two or three things. I think one of those is quite pivotal, which is humility and learning to be open to any sort of role that comes your way. An example would be out of the first batch, I joined as a management trainee with a batch of approximately 30 folks in sales and marketing and HR. I was the only one sent to a smaller hotel called the Leela Udaipur, which was just opening up. And everyone else went to Mumbai or Delhi or Bangalore. I think solitude and the fact that I had the opportunity to build my craft from the base was super important. The Leela gave me an opportunity to work with the entire spectrum of workers from blue collar to white collar, which brought me to a place where I think I started to become more self-aware on what I was good at. Some moments like building the hotel in Udaipur, getting an opportunity to build another hotel in Chennai, helped pave the way to understand that I think I found my calling in setting up companies from 0 to 1. And what followed later was a stint with Altasource, which was a US-based financial and mortgage services firm. I had the opportunity to set up 2 new processes, work on the Philippines office setup for us. That was my first international stint in 2014. After that, coming back, taking over an entire office as a site lead in Navi Mumbai, working through multiple facets of HR operations, talent acquisition, comp and ben, and then moving to a completely different industry, commodity trading with a company called Trafigura, where I had the opportunity to again set up a new entity for Trafigura in India called Puma Energy. That I think I kind of saw that coming up as a specialism again and again. I had a brief consultant stint with a firm called Gemini Corporation, which was a circular investor firm, which took me across from Rajasthan to Mumbai to Belgium, Antwerp. I think I learned that you've got to be able to look at your career in a series of milestones, and each milestone either teaches you what to do or what not to do. And I'm glad that I had both these lessons come up to me at the same point of time. I think in my last stint before I joined Alliance Bernstein, I was setting up Bureau Happel's India office. Bureau Happel is an engineering design and consulting firm, and it was a truly commercial stint, much like the one with Trafigura, and is around dealing with real estate as a business, engineering design as a business, and working with some of the largest players in the market. And they're very strong and clear goals on inorganic growth and exponential movements. That helped me move to, I think that paved the way for the stint that I currently have with AllianceBernstein in setting up the India office. I've been responsible for joint ventures, scaling up, moving from task-based to decision-based roles within the current office. I think, and it's been my first stint as a whole-time director on the board, taking up a para business role while I continue to, my bread and butter continues to be HR. So looking back, I think it's easier to connect the dots in hindsight, but to understand and identify the ability, your own ability as someone who specializes in scaling up businesses, I think that paved the way for whatever little I've been able to achieve in my career so far.
Great, great. So I've got a holistic view of what you have done. You have done and been in a lot of industries, different domains. A lot of
Yeah.
a lot of students actually they start their careers as a management trainee nowadays. What are the technicals or soft skills do you believe are very critical for students aspiring to succeed in HR or any leadership role? And while they start their journey, what is the main focus which they should concentrate more on rather than just being able to achieve a designation in any industry or organization?
Um, Again, benefit of hindsight, right? I think in terms of technical skills, to me, talent acquisition is like math. You you might not envisage a career in TA, but you have to understand recruitment. You have to understand the levels around recruitment, identifying the right talent, because that literally makes up for 90% of your role as an HR leader or a professional. Have you been able to create the right people ecosystem? Next, to my mind, would be a strong understanding of employee lifecycle management, specifically payroll and compensation. Again, not something that you might envisage a career in, but your understanding of these specifics will create the spine of any sort of work that you want to do. Between TA and HR operations, you're literally running all hygiene aspects of HR on a day-to-day basis, and your understanding is key. The third thing that I would encourage students to look at, management trainees to look at, is understanding the culture of the firm. And when I say that, I mean, what nationality is the firm from? If you think of the firm that you've joined as an artificial person, if you're working with an Indian firm, what are the key things that that can be pinned down to Indian culture? If you're working with a firm that has its base in Hong Kong, it'll operate slightly differently. Same with US, same with UK, which is again very different from the rest of Europe. I've had an opportunity to work in all of these different environments, and I can tell you, if you don't understand the DNA of the firm that you're working with, which goes back to our understanding of international HRM and cultural studies, uh, technical skills will only get you so far. Soft skills, I think the first one, of course, is creating a strong inductive communication process. If you can't explain your idea in 30 seconds or less, which I'm hoping I'll do today, you either come across as underprepared or you lack a sense of purpose. You haven't done your research enough. So I think learning inductive communication is important. Active listening, it's key to success for any HR professional. I think non-verbal and verbal cues tell you so much more in a conversation. The third thing to me is learning to embrace chaos. And, we could talk a little bit about Gen Zs and Gen Alphas now, but I think for you to be agile and resilient is key to a fast-tracked growth in any career, not just HR. I think these are some of the cues that I would pull up.
Amazing. So, you do believe that hard skills can be covered by providing proper training to the candidates and any employee, but culture fitment is a task. How do you
Yeah.
access or understand whether or not a candidate will be fit for an organization's culture or not?
Um, I think for us to understand, first of all, we need to be very well aware of what the culture of the organization is, and not just what's written on the website, but what we experience on a day-to-day basis. I'll give you two examples. With Trafigura, speed of trust was super important because we were in a trading environment. So if you could not work with somebody where you had to be process driven, you needed clarity every time without commitment, chances of you succeeding in that firm, no matter what role you had, was very difficult. Alliance Bernstein sits on the other side. While we are still on the trading side, an asset management company, I think building trust is important. In being intellectually curious is important. So if, for example, the candidate does not have adequate questions, or does not seem to be prepared in the interview, or does not have a learning angle to himself or herself, I think the chances of succeeding would be lesser. This is just two small examples that I can think of. But I think understanding the culture of the firm yourself as an interviewer is important. So one of the things that I keep telling people when I interview them is, we're not interviewing you, you're interviewing us, because we're looking for a role, you're looking for a next step in your career.
Correct.
So if you're not coming with more preparation than me into the room, that tells me a lot more about you than all the answers that you're going to give for anything else.
Amazing. So I have one more question with this. What strategies have you implemented to identify and nurture talent? Say, for example, if you find a talent which is, matching the hard skills you're looking for, the technical skill set, he has the right skill set and soft skills, and he or she also is a fit for the culture of the organization. But how do you nurture that talent, and how do you ensure they align with the organizational growth?
I think the first one really is to understand what is the journey that we want to take. Are we happy staying in a place where we want to run script-based or task-based roles? Because that ecosystem will be very different. The talent pool will be very different. The training model will be very different. Altisource was a good example of that setup. But if the idea is to evolve from a task-based to decision-based model, where you're looking at more judgment-based roles, I think we need to be able to identify. I have been able to identify and set up a set of future skills that the person might require, maybe 1 year down the line or 2 years down the line. And you start looking at the competencies that aid these future skills. To make it simpler, my firm has a very big aspect of research to it, my current firm. For you to be a strong researcher, your attention to detail and your ability to look at something from a problem-solving mindset is important. So what are the training models that I can put in to identify or build these two competencies is important. Your ability to learn. Do you have an appetite to pick up a certification? Are you going to look at a CFA course, or are you happy being exactly where you are? Also tells me a lot more, especially when we're looking at creating a set of top tier talent. Defining a strong sense of purpose is super important when you're creating this model. Does everyone understand what the firm is trying to achieve in the next 1, 3, 5 years? And are they aligning their own personal career goals with the firm's career goals? If you aspire to be a portfolio manager, you have to start by reading up about the investment operations piece in the firm that I'm currently in. If you aspire to be a trader, you have to first of all understand the commodities that you trade. If you're averse to the idea of capitalism, then you shouldn't be in a trading firm. If you're averse to the idea, if you don't understand the difference between a stock and a bond, asset management, you're only looking at a job, you're not looking at a career. I hope that answers the question. It's a very long drawn out answer. Sorry.
It does. And because you have experience in setting up businesses, a lot of students aspire to become entrepreneurs, but they don't, because half of the crowd, they think that, whether or not they're not ready for industry, or maybe the challenges they'll face. And half of the population, half of the student crowd, they have a mentality of, let's just start working in the industry first. Let's just have a 5 or 10 years of experience, and then I'll move into an entrepreneurial role. But because you have an specialization in building businesses 0 to 1, I just want to understand, can you share a few challenges you have faced while setting up HR frameworks for new businesses or regions, and how do you overcome them? So I'll tell you why am I asking this question. Just to give students a proper clarity whether or not you're prepared for any industry, and as the challenges come, prepare and face them as you have to, not there is no pre-preparation required. Over to you.
Okay. Oh, that's a multi-layered question, Shruti. Thank you. I'll try and do my best here. I think the first challenge that we've seen while setting up HR frameworks, at least I've personally seen, educating my global business on the nuances of the Indian market. Typical 90-day notice period, the fact that social networks are super important in a market like India. There's always a war for talent that's ongoing. Demand will never, supply will always overcome demand. However, what kind of optimal talent are you looking at? I think identifying what skills you're going to hire today has been important. Giving stakeholders or the firm, when I say firm, I'm talking about the global setup, of course, a sense of the Indian market landscape, understanding domestic mobility, understanding the fact that India poses as a country but is actually a subcontinent, and you could have culturally you would have more in common between people coming from the four corners of India. I mean, as much in common with people coming from four corners of India as you would if you were to put four individuals from four different corners of the world. I think cultural understanding of India, one, is important. Like I said, the war for talent, understanding demand supply pools, creating a strong backup plan for a market that's as volatile as ours, where people would still tend to look at moving if there was a difference of 20K in their annual salaries or monthly salaries. Have we defined the right HR ecosystem where people feel psychologically safe to speak up about the reasons for leaving or the reasons why they want to join? More than just looking at, well, I'm moving from job A to job B and I get a 30% increment, which is why I'm in X company or Y company. And if another firm gives me 30% more, I will move again. Does that help answer the question, or should I dive in more?
It does. It actually answers the next question I was about to ask. A lot of students, a lot of professionals actually who are in the industry for more than 2-3 years now, they have a lot of career instability. And that is because you rightly said that for a 30% increment every year, they just make a shift. Rather than focusing on those 30% of figures, they should focus better on the terms or the experience they will be getting along with the industrial or organizational growth. I think that would be the best way to switch a job rather than just focusing on numbers. And I think that, my question is answered, here as well. I have another question because you have led mergers, acquisitions, and business transition. Can you share how do you align HR strategies with business goals? Because that's a very critical change to have and a very critical strategy to align with the business goal. So can you just help us understand a little bit?
So thanks for that, Shruti. I'll try and not anticipate questions anymore. Just stop me if I go off track again.
No problem.
But I think you've used mergers, acquisitions, and business transitions in the same line. I look at it very differently. Obviously, it's an important part of your experience as an HR professional or even as a professional. I think all three models require three different approaches when you're aligning HR strategies with business goals. See, when you're looking at a merger, you're looking at an equal partner relationship, at least on the face of it. So first of all, it's important to understand, is this merger feasible from a cultural standpoint? If a European company is looking to merge with an American company, there will be divergent views on something as basic as titles and grading within the firm. How do you identify the key influencers within on each side of the table can determine 90% of your success in creating a successful merger, because it is these influencers, and they might not hold titles, but they carry a very strong influence within the key teams that we're trying to bring together. Not just externally, but also internally. When you're trying to merge departments, you've got to take a look at the key influences, the connectors, as I like to call them, within each team or each business. Understanding what drives or what incentivizes them to come to work every day, understanding their understanding of why the merger is important and what it will lead to, how it will be beneficial for both parties, has been critical. And I think has worked well in at least two of the three mergers that I've been part of or I've run in my career.
Okay.
The other aspect was defining success benchmarks. I think any merger and I'll get to acquisitions in a bit, defining any parameter at the onset, just like you would if it was a project, is important. What is the outcome that you're expecting, and what is the timeline to that outcome? How many milestones have you created? What are the HR milestones? So when do you identify? So the first thing you would look at is my headcount sufficient for the new merger, or do I need to look at repurposing my teams across the two boards? The second thing would be, okay, if I've identified that this should be the headcount, are the skills right? Or do I need to go outside the market and find people? Or do I upskill the current population? Because they've been part of one of these two entities. The third example could be, do I have the right compensation strategy for this new entity, which brings the best of both worlds at both ends, right? That to me sets up a successful merger, at least does not guarantee anything, but mitigates the chances of failure, if I could call it that. In an acquisition, it's slightly different, because if you're the acquiring company, there's a general misalignment of power. And you usually acquire a company because you're trying to either experience inorganic growth, or you're trying to acquire a key skill set that you cannot through traditional models of recruitment, or that you're looking to make a massive change in your business model altogether. You're trying to merge and go into a new territory. In each of these three circumstances, retaining that talent in the acquired company is critical, at least the entire mass of it. And then starting to work through on what would be beneficial for both parties in the longer term. In that instance, I think HR strategy would largely circle around creating a cultural roadmap for the acquired company as well as the acquiring company. What are the elements between the two that align? Where are the differences? And how can we come to a middle point? Setting up a project team across both sides, again, bringing in the connectors, doing focus group conversations is critical. The most important thing in an acquisition is to give the acquisition adequate time, but not overstretch it. Find the balance between the right time and too much time. Because if you give too much time, you dilute the experience of an acquisition, the excitement for the acquired company to move into usually a bigger company, which is why you're doing an acquisition. If you give it too little time, you've created disruption that will lead to the talent in the acquired company moving out. So in each of these circumstances, I think sensitivity and some of the skills that I talked about at the onset, the ability to embrace change. The best laid plans will go to hell in the first 1 month. You've got to be able to repurpose yourself, identify what needs to change, but sticking to your parameters on what is that 25% or the top three outcomes that I want to achieve is important. So having a strong project management mindset becomes critical in both aspects. Understanding of financials is something that I missed out on when I talked about what are the key skill sets that students need to have. But I've seen that come back to me again and again. I was not a big fan of maths, but I think for some reason, maths has not left me over the years. You've got to be clear in the financials around a merger or an acquisition. If you see that going south, we have to have the ability to call it out early on. There's a general assumption that HR doesn't necessarily need to look at financials or understand commercials. I've learned this the hard way at the onset, and I've leveraged it multiple times overall. You cannot be a successful HR professional if you're not a successful finance professional. What I mean by that is, if you don't understand the trial balance, if you don't understand basics around balance sheets, if you don't understand the commercial aspect of any decision, it's acquiring, getting somebody as a new hire, letting someone go, the cost of attrition, cost of replacement, cost of merger, I don't think you will be able to understand larger exercises like mergers and acquisitions. Business transitions, I think I've answered to some part, to some extent, but largely, I look at business transitions as restructuring within departments and teams. Uh, that follows approximately the same principles. What are your key outcomes that you're looking to achieve? Are you sticking to a plan? Are you sticking to a timeline? Do you have a project management mindset with the key stakeholders?
Amazing.
Sorry,
I think
long answer
listening
again.
to you, Devansh, sorry to cut you in between, but listening to you, I understand that you focus more on the details of the process because we have talked a lot about parameters, matrices, everything is mathematical solution. So, correct me if I'm wrong anywhere. With, I mean, you focus more on details rather than the process as a whole. So, with that, do you also explain to the students or do you also provide an advice to the students that whether or not wheresoever they want to reach in their careers, they should focus what they have on their plate right now rather than just an holistic view of the overall goal that which they have?
If there is one lesson that I'd like to give anyone in a business school is focus on the present. The future will take care of itself. I think at least the first 3 to 4 years, when you step into any role or any specialization, learn to say yes to anything that you're picking up, any project, any aspect, because you're also trying to create your self purpose. You're trying to be more self aware. What are you good at? What are your blind spots? You can't do that if you haven't experimented enough. So I couldn't agree more. I think it's super important to learn any and all aspects, get involved in as many uh, projects, life projects, dissertations as you can, speak to and work with as many industry leaders as you can, pick up unpaid internships for all I care, but it'll all come true. I mean, it'll all bear fruit in the longer run. One of the concerns, I'm going to take 30 seconds and explain this, but one of the concerns that I continue to see, and my fraternity is also responsible for it, is um, I think this need to chase compensation over skills uh, will give you jobs. I mean, you will still move around 10 years and you will have multiple jobs and you'll get somewhere. But post that proverbial 10-year mark, what I've seen is people generally stagnate when you haven't perfected your craft, when you haven't learned what you're really good at. If you've stayed a generalist, I think chances of you growing beyond a certain point reduce exponentially.
That I think that answers to a lot of questions I have. Um, with that, I
Sorry
think
again.
we can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can. I'm saying sorry again.
No
I picked
problem.
up
No, that's not.
half a
That's
word.
wonderful, actually. Your journey from foundational HR roles to leading global HR strategy, I don't think it's nothing less than inspiring. And your advice on aligning people strategy with business goals, nurturing talent, adapting to the evolving HR landscape, it has provided our audience, I think, an actionable takeaways that what truly they need to do right now. And we are truly grateful for your time and wisdom, Devansh. We look forward to seeing you how you continue to shape the future of people management and organizational leadership. Thank you so much. With that, we come towards the end of our video. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your advice. And thank you so much for sharing all the takeaways.
Thank you so much for having me on the on this interview, Shruti, and thank you for the questions. I hope that this is helpful in some aspect, but happy to talk through later. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was
Thank
invaluable,
you.
amazing experiences you have shared with us today. I wish all the best to you with Alliance Bernstein and with your growing leadership in the industry.